Hello, Internet. This is Daniel with Driving and Dragons. Today I want to come to you and talk to you a little bit about mass combat in tabletop role-playing games. Doesn't matter if you're talking about Dungeons and Dragons or Cyberpunk or anything else. Mass combat is not something these games are typically designed for, and even when they do have some systems, they're generally not optimized. So I just want to take a second to talk to you about how to handle large-scale combat. We're talking army level, we're talking corps level battles, major sieges, massive engagements, how to handle them in your game and make it go a little bit smoother at your table to where it enhances the experience instead of becoming a slog. See you on the other side. So as a primer, mass combat, it's just really not what a lot of these tabletop role-playing games are actually designed for, to be perfectly honest. Tabletop role-playing games have always been very personal. They've always been very character-focused. It's about your character, your party. It's about individual narratives. And that is just not typically something that large-scale battles play into. Large-scale battles happen, and their impact on the individual in most cases doesn't really... Success and defeat don't really matter. It's so much where that success or defeat leaves that individual. So as a result, most tabletop role-playing games do not have rule systems that are in any way conducive to running large-scale battles. If you try to run a large-scale battle in Dungeons & Dragons to the letter, all you're going to do is spend hours upon hours rolling dice, most of which are NPCs fighting other NPCs, which nobody wants to see. Dungeons & Dragons in general has a slow enough combat system as it is, without having your players sit there and fiddle with their dice tower and build sculptures out of their random D20s that they're stacking up, all because you're sitting there as the DM rolling attacks from the town soldiers versus the orcs that are invading, basically sitting there playing with yourself. So there's got to be ways to streamline that combat. And there's also, be it Dungeons & Dragons, Cyberpunk, any kind of modern wargaming, anything like that, there's also got to be ways that you can take these encounters and have the players have a narrative in it. Even wargaming, like tabletop wargaming, you don't deal with really army size. That's typically squad-on-squad combat, even when you're playing a game like Warhammer or MechWarrior or something with miniatures. You're still not on an army scale. These people are not playing with 10,000 miniatures aside. So, when you're talking about this army scale combat, especially in tabletop role-playing games where that focus is even smaller down on the individual scale, there's two things you want to avoid. The first thing you want to avoid is you don't want this to become a drag and a slog like I was talking about before, where it's just the game master playing with themselves, rolling dice all over the place, hundreds and thousands of rolls to get through one round. Even if you're breaking it down into squads and stuff, making just a giant math crunch that's not fun for anybody. But you also don't want it to just be window dressing. There are times when it being window dressing is fine, depending on your narrative. And I would say this, if you're talking about a situation where there is absolutely no impact that the players can have, it really probably should just be background information. It may even be something you want to have happen off screen, something that you want to have the players away from when it happens. But what I'm talking about in this video is a way to have real meaningful mass combat that the players can feel like they have an integral part of, that has real stakes and real consequences, and feels deeply like the characters are an integral part of, but to do it without ending up in a situation where the game just turns into a massive slog of dice rolling and just other nonsense, or where it makes your characters feel like they're superheroes And it's like, oh, well, the whole reason that we won this battle is because Billy the fighter got out there with his halberd and was wiping out entire divisions of enemy troops with his 14 attacks around and his double action surge and his magical halberd of haste and his, super cleave, and he's killing 20 and 30 people every time he swings his halberd like he's Sauron in the beginning of the Lord of the Rings movies, just knocking 40 and 50 elves into the air with each swing of his mace. You don't want to have that happen, either one. I mean, if you're playing like a superhero game, and when I say a superhero game, I mean like you're trying to have like demigod level characters and whatnot, sure. But if you're trying to have something that has some real narrative stakes that makes the players feel like it's tough there, you need something that works a little better. And I've got a bit of a system that can help with that. So we're going to start off. I use a battle point system. And we're going to start off by going over the 3 phases of my battle point system. And I use bad weather. I use a storm to kind of describe them. You have the gathering clouds, the calm before the storm, and the thunder rolls are the 3 segments of the battle that I put forth with these battle points to see how our characters are going to influence a major engagement. And we'll get onto that right here on the other side of this break. There's 3 phases that I have in my battle point system. The gathering clouds. So I think about this, you got a storm coming on the horizon, just like your battle. All right, you see the clouds start to gather on the outside. You feel the pressure as that barometric pressure drops. You feel that heaviness in the air before the storm breaks, and you see it off in the distance. Same thing happens with these major battles. When I say the same thing happens, what I'm talking about is this is the phase where we all know something's happening. We all know something's coming. We all know that there's going to be a battle, and we're starting to put the pieces together. This may be a point where a couple of NPC commanders are jockeying for who's going to be the commander of the overall defense or the overall attack, depending on what the case may be. And you may have events that are related to role-playing situations or even direct action situations where the players are trying to get a particular general or a particular captain or commander to be the one that's named the commander of these forces. This is where you might have the players being sent on diplomatic missions to try and find some assistance from somebody from another nation or from another nearby lord. This might be where you have some of your initial scouting missions to kind of see just how big is the orc horde, just how many people are in this coalition of booster gangs or this enemy army that's invading. How many soldiers does this megacorp have to clean out your section of the city? You're starting to do your scouting work. You're starting to learn the who's who of the enemy and the who's who of your forces. And you have missions, both role-playing and direct action, that are focused on those kind of things, setting the stage. In the second section, where you have the calm before the storm, now the pieces are in place. We know who the commanders are. We know who's been solidified as the one who's going to be in charge of our forces, their forces. We've discussed things with the neighbors. Now we're starting to do those little things, those little skirmishes and stuff that happen before the big battle. This is where the players need to go out and hold a small village that's in a mountain pass. This village is going to fall. There's no way to stop it. But the players are going to need to keep the enemy out of this position for a very short period of time because there are supply wagons and supply trains coming through. And we have to get these supplies through if we're going to survive the siege. So it's desperate for the players to get out there and come up with something that keeps the enemy from overrunning this place, at least for a little while we get the wagons through. This is where the players might infiltrate the enemy camp and find that engineer, this brilliant-minded engineer that the enemy has, who has created and crafted all these fantastic siege engines, or is the scientist who developed a powerful weapon, or a wizard who is a key part of the enemy's attack strategy. This is the part where the megacorp that is going to wipe out your section of town has a powerful rail gun that has been developed, and the party needs to break in and needs to sabotage this to make it a non-factor to get it out of the picture. And then finally, last but not least, you have the Thunder Rolls, which is the battle itself. And the battle itself will be influenced by the previous two sections. So maybe that railgun was a complete failure with that railgun. So now that you're having to do something to make up for all the damage this railgun is causing, where it's just blowing holes in your defensive structures and taking out what little artillery you have. Or maybe you had it sabotaged, so it's just kind of firing at random, and you need to take advantage of moving your troops in the right directions and luring their troops into the way, or things of that nature. Or maybe you were able to trigger that railgun to where it completely explodes or it melts down or something, and you need to jump in and seize the advantage under the confusion of the enemy, and in a daring charge. But this is where you're going to have the actual parts of the battle, is in that Thunder Rolls section. Those are the three sections of how this battle point system works. When you write your adventure, when you put your campaign together, because the battle point system can be used for a single adventure that's multiple sessions, or it can be used for the overall part of a campaign, just depending on how much you want this major battle to feature in your campaign or what you're playing at your table. So when you're writing this out, you're going to write basically in reverse and have 2 or 3 different versions of this big final battle that are predominantly, or 2 or 3 different frameworks. You don't want to write out everything, because as you play, you're going to figure out where they go. But then you're going to work backwards, and you're going to say, okay, here's the things that can influence this, that, or the other from my first 2 sections. And that's what's going to dictate your final battle. When you do these kind of games, and the way this system works, is every event is going to have a set number of battle points assigned to it, and it's going to be on a scale. So we'll use that railgun as an example. The enemy has a new powerful railgun that can destroy our tanks in a single hit. It's just a monster. It's just something that's going to destroy everything. We got to have a way around this. We got to have a way to stop it. Well, your players are tasked with going and taking it out. And if they're able to destroy the railgun, they might get 10 battle points. If they're able to rig it to where it's not destroyed, but when they try to fire it in battle, it blows up and not only causes mass confusion, but maybe even injures a bunch of enemy troops, now they're going to get like 15 battle points, because that's even better than just destroying it. The enemy had no time to plan around it, no time to adjust their strategy. When they bring out their big trump card, it blows up in their face. Or the players may fail and get 0 battle points. Or even worse, the characters may get captured, and under torture and either magic or technological mind reading type stuff, they have their own defense plans pulled out of their head. Maybe now the railgun mission's not only a failure, it's not only 0 battle points, it's -10 battle points. Or it's -5 battle points, because it actively makes things worse. Every mission is assigned this way. And especially in the early stages, sprinkled throughout, you're going to have some random events too, some side quests, if you will. So, for instance, you're racing to the neighboring duke to try and get an ally for support against an orc horde that's coming in. But at the same time, there's a woman who is kidnapped by bandits or something you hear about. And your players could just say, well, we don't have time for that. We got to focus on the big picture here. We got to take care of something. They don't go help her. And it doesn't do anything. There's no lost battle points or anything from it. It's just a side quest, right? And when they get there and whatever the success level is with the Duke. However, you can reward your players by remembering to be human, by remembering to be good. This is where their alignment can come in. If they're neutral, they may just push by. If they're good and they're playing good, they may actually go say, look, we got to help this girl. Well, turns out a prominent millwright or a prominent farmer is who this daughter was, a minor landholder. Next thing you know, when battle is coming through, that daughter her dad is so grateful, he brings 5 wagons of food to your siege. And that side mission that is not directly related all of a sudden becomes worth extra battle points, an extra 5 or 10 battle points. Same thing, you're coming across a den of goblins or something that are harassing a local area, but you don't have time to take care of it. Those end up joining the orc horde, or those end up making that pass mission that I was talking about earlier, where you have to keep the pass open for the supplies to get through in the calm before the storm. Maybe that now becomes something that's either impossible or more difficult because you didn't take care of this earlier on. So you can sprinkle in these little side quest things that don't have an immediate view, that aren't automatically something that you think of as part of the missions, and they help. So you have all your battle points, and you'll tally them up for the first 2 sections. And you have your ranges. So let's just say if you have anything less than 10 battle points, it's going to be a crushing defeat. If you have anything between 11 and 20 battle points, it's going to be a narrow defeat. If you have from 21 to 30 battle points as a party, the battle is going to be a narrow victory. It's going to be like a draw or a Pyrrhic victory. And if you have from 31 to 40, it's going to be a narrow victory. Or if it's going to be 41 to 50, it's going to be like a legendary victory where everything goes the way you want it to go. That sets the stage for what's going to happen at the battle. Then you write that's how you set up your battle. And your battle now becomes something that you can snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Because if they screw up 15 or 16 different things and get a bunch of negative battle points, they go from a legendary victory to a narrow victory, or to a Pyrrhic victory. Or maybe they're on a narrow defeat going into the battle, but they have just enough heroics to pull it up to where it's a draw, or a Pyrrhic victory. And this is how you have these players have an impact on it. Because they can see, they don't know about, obviously you're not going to play every version of the battle, so they don't know what it would have been like to have a legendary victory set up going into this, having all the advantages to where all they have to do is break even and they're going to have a legendary victory. They don't know about that if they didn't do very well in those early quests, if they only got the average number of battle points, or if they got way less because they had some failures or some screw-ups or some missed opportunities. But they get to see in the battle itself the influence of their decisions. They get to see the millwright's daughter bringing that extra bread, bringing those wagons of food. They get to see that duke that they were able to convince to be an ally show up with his troops. They get to see the railgun explode in the battle, or they get to see the enemy show up with less siege engines. Their siege engines are not rolling very well, or they look shoddy and ramshackle because you took that engineer out and now they're not properly set up. You get to see the impact of your events, of your actions as a party in the battle, and you get to have that satisfaction of that battering ram doesn't work and isn't going to breach our gates because we took out that engineer or we sabotaged it earlier. And then once the battle's over, the party gets to feel like they had an influence, and they had an opportunity for some heroics, or they had an opportunity for some failures. They can walk out being, man, we got out by the skin of our teeth. Should have been an early battle, but an easy battle, but those bad dice rolls, or, man, that stupid decision, we should have jumped in and filled the breach, or we should have collapsed the wall over the gate to prevent them from getting in. We had a chance there, and we were trying to save too much, trying to be too greedy. Whatever the case may be, we're lucky we got out of this. Or they get to have that heroic stand where they're like, we would have lost, and we know we would have lost because things look grim, but that stand on the gates of the keep, on the steps leading up to the keep, gave the Grand Duke time to escape, where he could rally more forces. Those spies that we slipped out through enemy lines were able to get those reinforcements in that saved the day at the last second, and it's still a loss, but at least we were able to get people out. They get to have those moments, and it's all guided by, on the DM side, by that battle point system. So that's how I handle mass scale combat. The actual battle itself, everything that happens in the battle and before the battle is all like special forces type, squad level, fire team level events for your players. They're going and doing the kind of thing it makes sense for 4 or 5 specialized players or 4 or 5 specialized operators to go take care of, where you're not going to need brute force. Little mini adventures, little mini battles. That's what they're doing. They're not doing stuff that requires a whole army that you have to sit there and roll on. The army battle happens around them and is influenced by some of the things they've done, but you're not rolling that out. It becomes a background for the other things they're doing. But they still get to have an effect. They still get to see their impact by the culmination and by the collective work of everything that you've done up to that point. So, ask me if you got more questions about it down in the comment section. I'll be happy to talk about it. But that is kind of the overview of how I handle mass combat in tabletop role-playing games. I use a battle point system to make all the little pieces add up, and then I work them into how they influence that major battle. It works great. I've been able to run entire campaigns based on it and it's actually a really cheap way to build tension, because it's actually a tool for you as a writer to guide how bad you need to make things or how good things need to be. And because it's directly related to success or defeat in previous missions, it builds the proper narrative tension. So, if you have any questions about it, let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you handle mass combat in your games? And I'll see you guys next time.